The way down to the beach is kind of treacherous. It's tricky to climb down. The steepness of the descent keeps most people away, so it's kind of nice and secluded. There's a rope that someone had tied to the base of a tree near the top to sort of help over this one bit, which is pretty close to vertical. So I just hung onto that and followed that down.
It's a tricky climb, even with the aid of the rope.
Careful now.
Jordan knows the only way off Mushroom Beach is to climb back up the cliff. But that's a problem for later. Hornby's vacation season ended weeks ago, so he has the place all to himself. The only sign of life on the beach is a makeshift wooden shelter.
It was sort of a neat thing to look at. I took quite a few pictures of it. I plopped myself down on the beach and leaned back and sort of relaxed for a few minutes. And pulled out an old 1970s National Geographic that I'd gotten at the free store on the island and proceeded to while away the next hour or so just reading. The breeze was nice and warm, the tide was out, hear the waves crashing a little bit. It's about as peaceful as you're gonna find.
After his break, Jordan sets off to look for images that inspire him.
I started as a newspaper writer, and the photographer there taught me a few things, and I fell in love with it. There's lots of unique stuff on Hornby to keep the rolls going through the camera pretty easily.
Jordan heads north in search of the sandstone rock formations the beach is famous for.
That was part of my mission. I was going to go take some pictures of the sandstone.
After exhausting all the ground-level angles, he starts looking for a high vantage point.
The cliff wall is continuous all the way around, and I spotted a ledge about halfway up that looked like it would be quite a nice perch to get some good shots of Vancouver Island on the horizon. I decided to leave my camera up and see if I could make my way up it, and then if it looked like it was a decent spot, then I'd lug my bag up. It was quite a big camera bag. I had all my gear in it. I was wondering how I was going to get up there. There was no obvious route. I've always been one to sort of enjoy climbing trees and scrambling over boulders and that sort of thing. So it was pretty easy climbing. You know, I didn't have to find any handholds or footholds or anything like that.
But the higher Jordan climbs, the steeper the cliff becomes.
I made my way up quite a treacherous little section. The cliff right there, it's pretty much vertical.
He then hits another problem. To get to the ledge, Jordan has to clamber around a bulge in the rock face. Jordan thinks about giving up the climb. He knows a slip from this height could prove fatal. But he really wants that shot.
So I just reached around to sort of shift my way around it. Virtually as soon as I got my fingers into this crack, this rock came off. I had my footing on the ledge, but not my balance for what seemed like an eternity. I watched this rock go down. There was a good 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi before it hit. I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's me next. I knew I couldn't keep my balance and instantly got the feeling you get in your stomach when you're going over the top of a roller coaster. The adrenaline kicked in right away. I knew that this wasn't going to be a little twist your ankle sort of fall. Below was just a bunch of jagged rocks. I knew that I was going to be quite a mess at the bottom. I was thinking I was going to have to be sponged off the cliffs pretty much. When I first started falling, time seemed to slow about as close to stopping as it could. That was sort of the most surreal part of the fall, but it didn't take long for gravity to speed it back up again. And then suddenly I was on the bottom. There I was at the bottom, staring up at the blue sky and where I had just been, up on the ledge there. And I could feel that there'd been a big impact. My head was definitely swimming. It just hurt. But I was surprised I wasn't dead. That was my first thought. I was more happy than scared at that point, just because I realized the fall was over and I still had my brains in my head.
It's a miracle he's alive. But Jordan can't believe he's escaped serious injury.
I knew I couldn't have gotten away from a fall of that height scot-free. The first thing I did was check my head. I figured I must have given it a pretty good whack. Nothing felt broken and everything else was looking pretty good. So I was sort of enjoying these small victories.
He remains cautious.
My next fear was that I'd broken my back somewhere and wouldn't be able to move my legs.
Paralysis is his worst nightmare.
It took me about 5 minutes of laying there to get the courage up to try and wiggle my toes. When I did finally get the courage and they moved, I was ecstatic. Felt that if I was still alive, if I wasn't paralyzed, then anything else would be inconsequential. My next mission, I suppose, was to see sort of what shape I was in beyond those two basics of still being alive and still being able to move my legs. As soon as I tried to roll over, I could sort of feel the bone, them grating against each other. I immediately knew that something was, very, very broken. I heard, I don't know if heard is the right word, you sort of feel it more, a crunch. I was sweating from the pain and from the shock, and I reached behind and just gently sort of was touching my hip. I was very aware that it wasn't just a little crack. Where once there was smooth bone, there was now a couple jagged pieces sort of grinding into each other and was pushing against the skin.
The fall has completely shattered Jordan's pelvis. It's a horrific injury that effectively separates his right leg from the rest of his body. Standing is out of the question. He tries to turn onto his stomach so he can at least crawl. Now Jordan realizes the terrible situation he's in. He's left his mobile phone in his van. He lives on his own, so no one will be looking for him. And Mushroom Beach gets almost no visitors this late in the season. Jordan is completely on his own.
I knew that the seclusion of the area was definitely not in my favor.
Jordan lives alone, so it could be days before anyone notices he's missing. His first priority? To find warmth before the chill of the North Pacific night sets in.
My mind went back to the beach and all the driftwood there. My plan was to somehow get back there and have myself a nice, cozy bonfire.
Jordan breaks down his survival plan into single, manageable tasks. First, he must crawl the 100 meters back to his backpack.
I knew I'd have to get back to my bag, which had this warm wool sweater and that last gulp of tea that I kept in the bottom of my thermos.
But first, Jordan must shift onto his front. His horrifically mangled pelvis turns this apparently simple task into a nightmare. It's a pitifully small victory, with a terrible cost in agony. And it's only a start.
I started to pull myself forward with my arms. As soon as I tried, I would just get nothing but overwhelming pain, and my body just wouldn't work.
The 100 meters feels more like 100 kilometers. Every movement grinds the edges of Jordan's broken bones together and tears at flesh, muscle, and nerves. It's all taking way too long. Hour by hour, fingertip by fingertip. Finally, an incredible 30 hours after he started his grueling marathon, he reaches his destination. It's too wet to start a fire, but at least the wooden shelter he photographed yesterday offers some protection from the elements.
Thank you. Thank you.
The shelter wasn't waterproof or windproof by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to the outside, it was definitely the Ritz to me. There was no way for me to get dry. I just kept on my wet clothes and tried to keep to as small a ball as I could to sort of try and conserve my body heat. I knew that the possibility of meeting my end from exposure was becoming very real.
Jordan discovers that drinking water from the tidal pools was a mistake.
I just lay there and retched up seawater for half the night. I was just feeling so awful. That was probably the longest night of my life.
In the freezing darkness, and in the depths of despair, Jordan's thoughts turn to his parents and his brother Justin, back in Saskatchewan.
I was thinking about my family, but not so much about me seeing them again. I was thinking about how crushed and how sad I would be if the situation was reversed. How frantic and how, devastated I'd be if something like this happened to my little brother, Justin. We're pretty close. If I was sitting at home cozy and he didn't make it out.
His family are used to hearing nothing from him for days on end. By the time they discover he's missing, he could be dead.
Now I'd sort of stopped hoping that someone was going to come down and find me and realized I would have to find people as opposed to them finding me. If I was going to make it, I had to get up to the cliff.
The sheer cliff he climbed down 2 days ago to reach the beach is the only way out. It was a struggle on the way down, even when he was fully fit. Climbing up the cliff without the use of his legs is surely an impossible task.
I either had to get to help or I was going to die. There was really no two ways about it, and when your choices are put that simply, you don't need a lot of motivation to carry on.
You can do it.
I was at the bottom looking up from 1.5 feet off the ground. It was very daunting to look up and see the size of it.
I can't believe I'm doing this.
I wasn't sure that I was going to make it.
Jordan faces a vertical climb of some 10 meters. He'll have to rely on the strength in his arms to haul his entire body weight up the rope.
Here we go.
But there is no alternative. If he doesn't attempt the climb, he will die on the beach.
1, 2, 3. Ah!
My hands were more hamburger than hands, and just with my strength, my injuries, the odds were definitely stacked. Using my hands as much as possible to brace myself. I was being so painstaking in choosing which rocks I would use for a handhold, knowing that if I made the wrong choice, that would be the end of me.
Jordan knows he can't survive another fall. His crushed pelvis means his legs are useless. All he can do is trust the strength in his arms and pray that the rope holds. He's nearly at the top when the unthinkable happens.
The rope came undone from the tree that it was attached to, and I was very lucky not to tumble back down when that gave way. Luckily, it gave me half a second to reach over and grab the nearest rock and somehow keep from falling.
Jordan realizes with horror that his arm muscles are about to give out.
My arms were just dead logs, and my grip was becoming weaker and weaker, and it was becoming apparent that something, one way or another, was going to happen pretty soon. It was the scariest point of the whole thing.
Jordan calls on the last drop of strength in his failing muscles.
I was very aware that it was do or die. I was just completely out of strength. In my arms, I couldn't feel my hands, I couldn't get my fingers to flex, and they just weren't able to keep a solid grip on any rocks.
There are now just centimeters standing between him and safety.
If I didn't get above it, I would die. There was no question. And if I fell from this wall as well, I would die, and there's no question in that. With the slickness of the rocks and the lack of feeling in my hands, it was a pretty perilous way to sort of maneuver, but that was all I could do.
If he slips now, then his grueling 2-day ordeal will all have been in vain.
If I made a wrong move here, I was either going to die or be paralyzed.
He's made it.
When I found myself down top after I'd flopped myself over the top of the vertical bit, I really felt that I'd gotten past the worst of it.
But it's come at a terrible price.
I had cuts everywhere, as broken up as I was, so near complete exhaustion that I couldn't move a muscle for probably 10 minutes. But I'd felt like I'd just climbed Everest.
Jordan's achievement is superhuman, but it's only one small step towards survival. It's taken him 2 days to cover just 500 meters. The main road is almost 3 times as far again, and he's chronically dehydrated.
1, 2, 3.
I was still in the same predicament I was in when I was at the bottom of the cliff. Very badly injured, and although physically closer to getting help, there's no sign of it anywhere.
Help!
You know, I'd call for help.
Help!
There was no sign of anyone.
Help me!
Jordan is hoping that if he can reach one of the forest trails, he might encounter a hiker.
The weather was still not exactly what you'd call ideal hiking weather, so I didn't really expect anyone to be out tramping around at that time. I was so thirsty, every cell in my body was, you know, just dying for water. You can go without food for, you know, a week or two, but 4 days without any substantial amount of water, and you're not going to be around much longer.
The rain-soaked ground chills Jordan to the core. But after nearly 100 hours without fluid, he grabs the chance to ease his parched thirst.
I was just so thirsty. I'd see a particularly tasty-looking droplet on the edge of a blade of the grass. So I was basically just crawling around, licking the grass for the water. And, you know, if you found a cobweb that would have 20 or 30 good-looking drops on it, I would pretty much just eat the cobweb. The toll from the climb up was pretty apparent, but I knew I had to keep going. So instead of looking at it as one big long pull that I had to do, I would break it down into sections of about 10 pulls, and then I'd rest and give myself 5 or 6 seconds of rest and then go as hard as I could.
Close to collapse, Jordan drags his broken body across the forest floor for 6 punishing hours. As the light starts to fade once again, Jordan claws his way to a picnic table. In spite of his agonizing injuries, Jordan has somehow dragged his shattered body on an epic journey of nearly 2 kilometers and up a sheer cliff. But now he's exhausted all his physical and mental reserves.
I could feel that my health was getting worse. I couldn't go any further forward. Pretty much figured that I wasn't going to be making it out, no matter what I did.
Despite all his heroic efforts, Jordan Nikerti is convinced that at the age of 26, his life is ending.
There was nothing to do but lay there, wait for death, and think of all the people that I wasn't going to see again.
By some miracle, Jordan survives the night. As dawn breaks, he draws on his final ounce of strength and determination. Severely dehydrated and slowly dying of his injuries, he forces himself to go on in a last desperate bid for life.
My plan on the fourth day was to get as close as I could to where people might chance upon me. I was that close to death. All I could think was just keep pulling.
The temptation to curl up and let go is overwhelming, but Jordan refuses to go quietly.
It probably took me around 2 hours to get about 20 yards. So I was only maybe going 5-6 feet at a time and then passing out for 10 or 15 minutes. The physical reality had set in, and there was really no more mind over matter to be had. There was no way I was going to get to the trailhead, or very much further for that matter, because the distance I was able to go before passing out was just getting shorter and shorter. I was actually going to die very soon.
Then he hears voices. He thinks the sound is hikers on a nearby trail.
Help me, please.
It was my first real chance of rescue.
Please help me.
I yelled as loud as I could to attract their attention.
Help. Help.
But Jordan's yells emerge as barely a whisper.
Help me, please.
The voices melt away into the trees.
It just seemed like it was just the cruelest joke. I was thinking that was my chance. That was it. The despair I felt at getting so close to being rescued, I've never felt that much bleakness in my life.
He starts to slip in and out of consciousness, dreams and reality blurring into one another. The sounds of voices return, just meters away.
So I started yelling again.
Help. Help
I
me,
just
please.
yelled and yelled at them.
This time, Jordan can actually see hikers through the trees. But they're getting further away.
Every step they were taking my survival with them.
Please help me.
The last two people in the group were probably about 2 steps away from being out of sight behind these trees. And there was a lady in an orange rain jacket, and I could see her stop and sort of cock her head, and she obviously had heard something. She started looking around and took a few steps back in my direction and finally saw me. As soon as she saw me, I can't even describe how relieved I was. I just watched them run towards me and just thought to myself, well, I've done my part, I'm your problem now. It was beyond joy, it was beyond anything. This was a chance at life again here.
You hear me? You hear me?
Jordan's 4-day ordeal would have finished most people, but his stubborn refusal to give up saved his life.
I came as close as you can get, I think, to dying, and it looked like I was gonna make it.
Jordan was treated for a ruptured pancreas and internal hemorrhaging, injuries that could have killed him within hours. In a series of operations, surgeons fixed Jordan's shattered pelvis using 12-centimeter long titanium screws. He also needed major skin grafts to his legs and hands. Jordan recovered fully and enjoys life at home with his family. He lives every day as though it's his last.
The only guarantee that we're given is that we will die. We can't pick when or how. The only thing we can affect is what we do with the time that we're given. I see my life now as something that is not to be squandered, even in the smallest amount.
29-year-old Bostonian Steve Callahan is halfway through the sailing trip of a lifetime.
I remember the first time I went out sailing. I love the immediacy of it. You can go off and have an adventure.
He's already sailed from the USA to the Canary Islands and is now heading off on a 3,500-mile return leg back across the Atlantic to the Caribbean.
Testing.
I figured on the very outside it would be a month to get to the Caribbean, but I'd probably make it in a few weeks.
For Steve, the trip is an adventure and also a means of escape.
My life was in a bit of a shambles. My marriage had gone south and we had split up. There I was, ready for a new stage of my life. The weather just started turning dirty. It was probably blowing 35 or so knots. And the waves started growing.
For an experienced sailor like Steve, it's nothing out of the ordinary.
I'd seen a lot worse weather before. And so I figured, well, it'll probably be a day or two and this will scoot by. I wasn't worried. Everything was fine.
As night falls and the rough weather continues, Steve switches on the autopilot and beds down for the night.
People think that sailing is a very quiet undertaking. It's not. Big waves are slamming against the side of the boat. You get this quite jerky motion, but I was still able to kind of lie down, and I was kind of half asleep. All of a sudden, there was this big bang on the side of the boat. There was just this huge flood of water immediately.
Steve has no idea what he's hit, but the boat's hull has been torn apart.
The water was rising very, very quickly.
Within seconds, the water is above his head.
I just thought, this boat is going to be underwater. I'm going right to the bottom.
Steve's boat is sinking. He knows he has seconds to get to the life raft up on deck.
I yank on the line, and the line keeps coming out. No, nothing. It just didn't work at all. Finally, boom, it pops open.
Steve makes it to safety. But just as he's about to cut himself loose, a terrifying thought hits him.
With the equipment that's in the raft, I will not last very long at all.
Everything he needs to have any chance of survival is stowed deep inside the flooded boat.
It was essential that I go back on the boat and dive down and get equipment. Even though I realized that the boat could slip under the waves at any moment.
Against every instinct, he knows he has no option but to dive back down into the sinking boat.
It was all dark in there, so I couldn't really see anything. I could feel the ditch kit. It was tied down. And I started cutting away.
Steve frees his emergency supply kit. But just as he makes it to the exit hatch,
The hatch slammed closed. The boat's covered with water. I'm going down. I thought that was it. If I don't get out of here right now, I am going to die. There's 100% certainty of that.
but just as Steve's lungs are about to burst, a huge wave breaks across the boat.
All of a sudden, there's air. It was a huge, huge relief.
With only seconds to spare, Steve escapes, clutching his vital emergency supplies.
I jumped into the raft and I saw that I was drifting away from the boat.
Steve can only watch as he drifts away from not just his boat, but also his dream.
I went drifting off into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It just was kind of devastating. That first night, it blew hard. Really cold and really wet and really scary. I was shivering a lot and I was worried about dying of hypothermia. I might not make it till the morning.
The currents are pushing Steve westwards, towards the shipping lanes, his only chance of rescue. But he's over 2 weeks away, with only enough water to last him a few days.
It wasn't going to keep me alive very long. You know, I'm taking a little sip every now and then, hardly even swallowing it, really. It's just being more absorbed. I'm getting really thirsty.
Steve ekes out his supplies for a whole week, but knows his only hope are the solar stills. But first he must understand what he's doing wrong.
It was critical to figure out how to use these things. Just like go back just from square one and try to figure out how does this thing actually work.
It's a drastic step, but he decides to rip one of his 3 precious stills apart in the hope that he can work out how to make them produce fresh water.
Right.
And it finally dawned on me, it had to be inflated just the right amount. To get the solar still to produce, I'm talking a spoonful of fresh water was like the hugest high I could possibly have.
Steve now has a tiny supply of water. But after 7 days at sea, he faces yet another problem. He's run out of food.
I was really hungry, just like really struck me how desperate I had become. There's no way I'm gonna live out here.
For days, Steve continues to try and catch fish, but to no avail.
In the physical sense, it was incredibly depressing. In terms of what I'd felt like I had done with my life, it was depressing. It was the most hellish time in my life.
All Steve's attempts to catch fish have failed. But if he gives up, he'll die of starvation.
I knew that this was not going to be easy. The fish has got to be right under the spear tip.
Yes!
By day 14, I've caught my first fish and I've produced water. So now, as long as the raft stays in one piece and I keep my act together, I might be able to live out here indefinitely.
For the first time in 14 days, Steve has a sense of hope. But the vast and deadly ocean is not about to let him rest. After a month at sea, Steve has drifted right through the shipping lanes, unnoticed. And back home, nobody even knows he's missing.
So pulled with emotions. That was the first time I cried. And it was like, this is the state of my life. What are you doing out here? My life just seemed completely and utterly as open and empty as the ocean.
Steve has drifted an epic 700 miles, but now faces a devastating new reality.
It was really very depressing because I just didn't think that I could fix it.
Steve knows the punctured raft is a disaster. He's going slower, wasting precious calories pumping it up, and now faces an even bigger problem.
I started consuming both water and the fish that was hanging to dry. I was unable to renew that stock while the bottom was deflated. I imagine it wouldn't have been a whole lot longer before I would have died. And then I got scared. This is very real, and you're going to be dead in a matter of hours if you don't snap out of it and get yourself together.
In a final act of desperation, Steve searches for anything that might save his life.
And it just, something happened, and it just clicked, and I go, oh yeah, the fork.
Steve hopes that a fork might just be strong enough to secure a patch to the raft.
I couldn't jump around and jump for joy or anything, but that was just like the hugest victory of my life.
Steve now only has 3 cans of emergency water left, and his body's toxic salt levels are pushing his sanity to the limits.
The physical part of me is going, hey, there's water over there, let's go snag that. But there was that overbearing rational part of me that was going, no, 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 I don't care. Unless, you know, you are dying, you're not getting into that right yet. This is a view of heaven from a seat in hell.
Alone on the ocean for over 70 days, Steve's body and mind are now shutting down. His only hope is to reach land.
I expected to see the islands like days and days before now. I should be reaching the islands. I should be seeing some sign of reaching the islands.
But then Steve has a shocking realization. If he's miscalculated his position, currents will sweep him back into mid-ocean and certain doom.
Maybe I'm way north of the islands, next stop England, you know, 8 months from now. So that was tough. I was very worried that I had screwed up and I wasn't going to make it. I just don't know anymore. maybe I'm dead. I've never been dead before. Maybe this is what it's like, and this is what I deserve for my shabby life, and maybe I'm just gonna be floating around out here forever. I felt all the hopelessness of people who'd been adrift at sea before and never came back, and nobody ever knew what happened to them. And here I was amongst them, and I could kind of feel them all around me. It just was a horribly desperate feeling. It was over. I was just done. I had no more to give. All of a sudden, it was like all kinds of crates and bottles and plastic. To me, that was the first definitive sign that I was coming into changes. I'm gonna see something. The sun rose. It was like, pff, there's an island in front of me. I couldn't have been more than 10 miles out. To see the green of the island was like, oh, it was such a, it was intense.
But to his horror, Steve realizes that the island is an impregnable fortress of vertical cliffs and razor-sharp coral reefs.
Oh my God, I've come all this way, and there's no way I can make a landing.
After enduring so much for so long, Steve can't let salvation slip away from him at the final hurdle.
This voyage is ending today. No question about it. One way or the other, this is going to come to an end. That's great. Somebody's actually, I couldn't believe somebody was actually out there.
On the morning of his 76th day adrift, Steve is spotted by some local fishermen.
He said something to the effect of like, "What you doing out here, man?" You know, it's like, well, I'm not out here, you know, improving my suntan. My senses were like plugged into an electric circuit somehow. They were all amplified so that every color was like really, really vibrant and every smell was really, really intense. It just was like heart-wrenching. It was so beautiful to me.
Having endured 76 days in his tiny raft, Steve's leg muscles have atrophied, and he weighs just 100 pounds. After 6 weeks in the hospital, Steve is reunited with the parents he thought he'd never see again. The small island of Marie-Galante, where he's found, is just 60 miles south of his original destination, Antigua.
There's nothing noble in me having survived. It's just what I did. I had too much unfinished business, and I think that kept me alive to a large degree.
I was looking down at the valley floor and really, not thinking too hard about where I was going.
But these mountains don't forgive the careless.
Found myself sliding down the hillside on my back, tried to dig my feet in, tried to dig my arms in, and think, yeah, we'll stop soon. Realisation dawns that I'm not slowing down, but I'm actually picking up speed. And then I realised that there's a cliff coming up. I'm not going to stop before I go over that.
With nothing to grab onto and no one to help him, Matt's momentum is about to plunge him into the void.
I did not expect to be alive when I hit the bottom.
As Matt plummets through the air, he's certain his life is over.
It felt like a very long time in the air between the top of that cliff and the bottom. In that time, an amazing amount of thoughts go through your head. It felt like an eternity. I don't remember the sensation of the impact. What I do remember most clearly is the thought, I'm still alive. It really was absolute surprise. Nothing felt too bad.
Matt experiences a wave of relief. It seems he's had a miraculous escape. But his adrenaline-soaked body is deceiving him. His wrist is smashed.
Where there used to be a straight wrist, there's now an inch dog's leg, and it doesn't look good at all.
And Matt's moment of horror doesn't end there. His ankle joint is pulverized. His tibia appears to be disconnected from his foot.
I'll do.
You can see the main bone from my leg trying to come out through the skin on the side of my ankle. It is pretty excruciating pain, the sort that gets into your gut and you actually feel physically sick.
But Matt's broken bones are suddenly the least of his worries. He realizes that he's lying in a fast-growing pool of blood.
There was obviously another serious injury somewhere, and I'm losing a lot of blood. I might not have very long left here.
Matt needs to find out where all the blood is coming from before he loses consciousness.
I start looking around. I find a gash across the back of my thigh. My finger's going up to the knuckle. It's that deep. It's gone straight through the muscle, and it looks like a piece of butchered meat.
Matt has no medical kit, capable of sealing a massive wound like this, and has to improvise, using a thermal t-shirt.
Grabbed a thermal and jammed it into this hole I'd found in the back of my leg. Took about 10 minutes to stop the bleeding, and it was a terrifying 10 minutes.
Matt has just averted almost certain death, but he has a smashed wrist and ankle, and is in excruciating pain. He knows he needs medical help, and fast. Then he suddenly remembers. He has a distress beacon. When activated, it uses satellites to alert rescue services and pinpoint his location.
I'm thinking, well, all I've got to do here is get that beacon activated, and there'll be people here within a couple of hours. The weather's clear, the choppers can fly, so I'm going to get out of here.
But Matt's search through his rucksack yields nothing. And he can't see the beacon anywhere around him.
And it slowly begins to dawn on me that this locator beacon isn't here. I haven't got it with me. I'm in big trouble.
He's left it on a shelf back at the shop. Matt's usually meticulous preparation has deserted him in his hour of need. Any hope of raising the alarm is now gone. And then an even more terrible thought hits him. No one back at his shop is due to raise the alarm for another week. He and little dog are on their own.
It's not going to be a case for an hour and a half. I'm actually going to have to keep myself alive for well over a week up on this exposed mountainside.
Matt's mountain experience tells him he has no chance without water and shelter. And he has neither.
I've got to get myself some shelter where I can get at water, where I can keep myself warm, where I can keep myself dry. We could have snow, we could have any sort of weather. I've got to start looking after myself.
But there's nothing in sight that could give him protection. His only option is to head downhill until he finds anywhere he can pitch his tent. As each tiny movement triggers daggers of pain, Matt faces up to the prospect of what lies ahead of him.
It's not a case of gritting your teeth and overcoming it. You know it's going to hurt, and you know it's going to be hard.
As Matt begins to drag his open wound and smashed limbs across rock and dirt, he knows he's beginning a journey through hell. In his struggle to find a spot to camp, he was forced to crawl through everything in his path, including water. Matt now discovers that his sleeping bag is totally drenched. He realizes he will have to find another way of fighting the cold.
For that first night, one of my big worries was hypothermia. There'd been frosts every night so far on the trip, so it was going to be a very cold night. Probably 3 or 4 degrees below freezing.
Wearing all his clothes is the only solution. But even just trying to get them on is a nightmare, as his bones grind against each other. As Matt prepares to face the bitter hours ahead of him, he knows just clothes won't be enough. He'll need to use anything he can to stay warm. He suddenly has an idea.
Howdy.
2 years before, Matt saved little dog from being abandoned And tonight, LD repays the debt with her body heat. It might make a critical difference.
I got the dog curled up in the middle of a tent, and I used her as a canine hot water bottle. And we lay there and shivered through the night.
It's you and me, boy.
It would have been very, very uncomfortable without the warmth of that dog there. It was cold, it was a bitter night. My body was doing a lot of work repairing itself anyway, and I felt I was shivering all night. I was cold, I was uncomfortable.
Unable to sleep because of cold and constant pain, Matt's thoughts turn to his family and how his young daughter will cope without him. Matt knows that survival depends on staying positive. Self-pity has never been his style.
I was sad that they were going to be concerned. What's everyone going to do if I don't make it out? What's going to happen? I just didn't go there.
Despite a night of freezing temperatures, somehow Matt and little dog make it to the morning. But his relief is temporary. He quickly realizes that although he's got enough food for just over a week, it's mostly dried. And Matt has no water left to boil it in.
One of the things I'd actually lost in the fall was my water bottle, so all I had to keep water in was my billy, my cooking pot.
Matt's managed to pitch his tent close to water. Simple for little dog to get to, but for him, it will mean enduring unspeakable pain.
It took a long time of lying there thinking about it to get myself up and to go and actually do it. Yeah, we need water. Let's go and do it. Come on.
But it's not just water for cooking and drinking that Matt needs. Unless he cleans his deep leg wound, he risks serious infection.
It was harder going down, a lot harder, just because it's very hard to slow yourself down and to control your descent with all the broken bones.
Matt's entire concentration is focused on avoiding pain and not losing his cooking pot.
I can't just throw it down to the bottom and then go and find it, because what if it rolls away? What if it gets washed away in the river? I cannot afford to lose this pan.
Matt's had nothing to drink for 24 hours and is seriously dehydrated. His leg dressing has prevented further blood loss, but the wound is now full of cotton fibre and grit from the fall. He must clean it out or risk infection.
It was a very real risk if I didn't do everything I could to avoid it.
Matt doesn't have any antiseptic available to clean his wound. But he has got table salt, which he knows has antibacterial properties. It'll be excruciating, but he has no choice.
If I waited any longer and made that decision later, the whole thing was going to be very, very difficult to do. Whereas if I did it now, I could do it. I believed I could do it.
Matt calculates that his only chance is to try and reach a hunter's hut he spotted before his accident. It might have fuel, food, medical supplies, and maybe even people. But it's nearly 1,000 meters below him in the valley. For a man who can barely move, Matt faces the biggest decision of his life.
I'm going to have to do this the hard way.
Reaching the hunter's hut in the valley below is Matt's only chance of rescue. But to get there, he knows he cannot crawl. He must try and walk. But with a smashed wrist, deeply cut leg, and worst of all, a fractured tibia, just standing up will push him to the limits of his endurance.
So I stood there for about 10 seconds, sort of started to come over a bit dizzy. I sort of collapsed into a heap on the floor. It's like, well, now or never.
But Matt refuses to give up. Somehow he must dig deep.
The dog throughout all this was running ahead and loving it. She was so keen to get out there, probably as keen as I was.
Matt knows his terrible wounds will fight him all the way. The only help he's going to get is from the walking stick he's made from tent poles.
And I was counting paces. I was saying every number I count is one less pace I've got to take.
Another 10. Another 10.
It took a lot to keep going. It really did. Each time I put the weight on the ankle, you'd feel that bone trying to come out through the skin, and it was just a shot of pain right through my body.
Every step is blinding agony, while the morning's heat saps his strength further. His only plan is to stay close to water and keep moving down.
I was very cautious to stay right next to this creek. That was my lifeline.
Matt knows he's heading in the right direction for the hut, but by deciding to follow the creek, he soon hits a problem. He's faced with a choice between two possible routes. LD seems to be immediately keen on going right, but that path is steep and challenging. Matt decides to follow the much gentler downward slope.
Look! Oh, come on! Get in here! Trying to get me killed? Come on! Get out of it! Yeah. Howdy. Out of it.
Somehow, Matt keeps his body going, dragging his smashed ankle over uneven terrain for 2 hours. But just as he starts thinking he might get out, the mountain springs another surprise.
The mountainside got steeper and steeper until I found myself standing at the top of cliffs dropping off into nothing several hundred meters below. There was no way sideways, there was no way down. The only choice was back the way I'd come. And all the effort I'd put in to get down to where I was, it was going to be spent tenfold getting back up.
By ignoring Little Dog's choice of route, Matt has wasted hours, exacted a terrible toll on his body, and seriously depleted his energy supplies.
I physically could not walk with the injuries I had, so it was back onto elbows and knees. It was probably one of the lowest points. Just the frustration.
Give me a break!
Matt realizes he's past the point of no return, but his route is perilous. The deep infected gash in his leg has taken another brutal hit. If the bleeding starts again, he may not be able to stop it. Matt pushes himself to breaking point, but he knows he must keep going at all costs. Knowing it will take all his energy just to pitch his tent again, Matt decides to rest up for the night and regain his strength. For a 9th night, Temperatures plunge below freezing. Little dog's food ran out 2 days ago, and she's finding it harder to fight off the cold. Yet she stays with her master.
We spent the night curled up, both of us at the bottom of the tent. Just knowing that there's this animal there, with you, sticking with me, is a reassuring thing. Kept me going emotionally, just the company of that dog there with me. The worst thing about waking up was those few moments of feeling that actually nothing was wrong. You wake up and your body feels normal. And then finding out that it's as bad as you remember it.
As another day dawns, Matt knows that he must reach the hunter's hut today. With hardly any food left, and his body close to collapse, he could die on the mountain. But to reach the hut, he'll have to get through the worst terrain he could imagine. Thick, mountainous scrub.
It looked like it was going to be very, very hard going. It was just a continuous process of forcing your way, almost swimming over the top of this vegetation. I was just getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
After 3 tortuous hours of struggle, Matt's dreadful injuries are taking their toll, and he's made hardly any progress.
Come on, you mad bum.
Seeing little dog negotiate the thick scrub so easily gives Matt an idea.
It got to the stage where there was no way of crawling over the top anymore. I was forced to squirm my way underneath.
After hours of gruesome effort and delirious with pain, Matt's made it through the worst of the brutal scrub.
And that was such a relief just to get out of that stuff and into this good going. I mean, I could stand up again and actually walk.
The hut can't be too far ahead now. But to reach it, Matt will have to force his broken limbs down a near vertical slope.
I was determined to reach the bottom of this slope.
Matt knows he's not going to be able to control his descent. Worse, the rocks and branches are going to punch and gouge his terrible wounds. It's a bloody gamble that could cripple him or kill him.
It was getting steeper, and so I was using whatever means I could.
Pushing his body to the extreme has paid off. Matt is now less than 2 kilometers from the hut. But getting to the valley floor has not come without tremendous cost.
I've done myself a lot of damage coming down this hill. My limbs are useless.
Matt can only hope the worst is behind him. The hut, and possible salvation, is tantalizingly close. But just as Matt finally allows himself to believe that he's made it, his dreams are brutally shattered. A fast, freezing river stands between him and the end of a nightmare.
That was so disheartening. It was so close, but unreachable, just out of reach.
Matt's body has already had to endure more than it can stand. And now, if he wants to live, he'll have to take his shattered bones and horrific wounds into the icy water.
Whether I could swim, whether I could propel myself was my real fear.
Matt makes his decision. He either dies on this bank or gambles his life in one last shot at surviving.
The water was absolutely freezing. All my muscles started to seize up.
Matt is quickly struggling. His weak, damaged body is no match for the fierce, freezing current. He has to fight the current or drown.
It wasn't what I needed. I was trying to swim a river with broken bones.
Matt knows that whether he lives or dies now depends entirely on the river, not on anything he can do.
I felt the main current begin to pull me, and it was dragging me over towards the far bank of the river.
Frozen and horribly maimed, Matt's washed up on shore barely alive. He's had a miraculous escape.
Every muscle in my body had seized. Everything had just stopped working. Very, very, very hard going, just even to move up the riverbank and away from the river. Very hard.
9 days after he was injured, Matt can see the hut. But he finally has to accept that he's probably going to die before he reaches it.
Cheers, LD.
I remember just thinking I might not have very long left here.
It's you and me, boy.
I couldn't have seen a more beautiful sight than that hunter walking out of that hut.
I got you, mate. I got you. Oh, lie down, eh?
And that's the moment I know I'm getting out of here. And I can't describe as good a moment as that. I was safe. It was relief. It was joy.
After patching him up as best they can, Matt's rescuers head off on a 13-hour trek to raise the alarm. 12 days after he started his journey, Matt is airlifted to the hospital, where doctors save his leg and rebuild his shattered ankle and wrist with metal pins. 6 months after his horrific experience, Matt is back in the mountains with little Dog.
The experience has made me realise what I value in life and what I don't. Having got out, you appreciate those companions that you had through life so much more.